Hi, I'm Scott Wrighton. It's my pleasure to bring you updates from the city, what's going on at the city, policy matters that impact the city or that even generate here at city offices, so that you're better informed as a citizen of Decatur. Today I'd like to talk about two topics, not ones that are necessarily directly related to something the mayor and city council may be considering or adopting at a next city council meeting, or that they did at a recent one in the past, but rather about larger policies that will nevertheless affect the city of Decatur or are currently affecting the city of Decatur. So railroads are in the news today for a couple of different reasons. The first is that several of the Class 1 railroads are contemplating going out on strike today. That will affect Decatur because the anticipated or planned strike actions affect both of the Class 1 railroads that serve the city of Decatur, those being the Norfolk Southern Railroad and the Canadian National, or the NS and the CN, respectively. The degree to which that will affect the delivery of goods and materials to our region is certainly unknown. It certainly depends on how long any kind of a strike action will happen. Coincidentally, it could be that there's fewer at-grade crossing problems that will result as well if there's fewer trains running. Assuming that the strike doesn't last too long and that rail traffic resumes to normal activity in a reasonable period of time, we will probably find ourselves back fairly quickly to a problem that Decatur has faced for many months, and that is blocking of at-grade crossings for excessive periods of time by both of these railroads, especially the NS. Now, the underlying problem, the underlying reason for this is that the railroads have adopted a new system called Precision Scheduled Railway, or PSR as they call it. The bottom line is they're using fewer people to staff and run trains, and the trains are getting even longer. So instead of 1 mile unit trains, they can be up to 2 and even 3 mile long trains. It's not difficult to see that trains that are significantly longer than the ones that they used to bring in and through Decatur will result in blockages of the at-grade crossings. They simply can't get them into the Decatur rail yards as fast. They have to break them at their way in. They don't have the staff to cover them. And so the rail lines coming into Decatur from all directions are oftentimes used essentially as storage by the NS Railroad, and that results in blocked crossings. I'm not talking about just 20 or 30 minutes, sometimes for hours at a time, and in some cases for even most of a day. This is unacceptable, and I want you to know, citizens of Decatur, that the city of Decatur has weighed in directly and has been doing so for months with the principal regulatory agency that governs the railroads in the United States, an agency of government called the Federal Railway Administration. They have a complaint process which we have used repeatedly because several years ago, when there were provisions for both the state and the local government to cite violations of both local ordinances and state law for when railroads block these crossings for too long, they could be cited. But in 2008, the Illinois Supreme Court decided that all of these were not legal, that they had been essentially preempted by federal law. So the federal government controls it, and so any relief that we are going to get is going to have to be provided by Congress, and it takes a long time to do that, to get them to regulate how long the trains can be and how long they can block crossings. In the meantime, we want to make complaints, and we have been doing so. In the weeks ahead, we will make available through our communications office information to you. If you've been affected by this, you can help us out. If you know the date, the time, the location, how long a train was blocking it, even if you have some photographic records of that, you can give us that information directly for us to file FRA complaints, or you can do it directly. And with some information that we will link to you, we'll provide instructions on how you can do that. Because the more people that the Federal Railroad Administration hears from in Decatur, not just the city government, the more of an impact I think they can have on leaning on the NS. The second item I'd like to talk about briefly is the Illinois Safe T Act. Now, there's some misinformation I think that is out there, and I will tell you that as a city government and as a police department, we are still evaluating all of the impacts of the Safe T Act. And our analysis isn't complete yet. And I will tell you as well that as a local government, we have some concerns about Safe T Act. But at the same time that I say that, I don't want to overblow it either, because I think that there are some, there might be a kernel of truth to some concerns that maybe you've heard about or that we've heard about out in the public, but they aren't necessarily entirely true. So I'm going to touch on a couple of those, and then we'll provide a link as a part of this program so you can learn more about it than some of the ones that I'm covering here. One of the claims is that the Safety Act actually serves to defund police. I can tell you that the city of Decatur is not in favor of defunding police. We've never been a proponent of defunding police. What the Act does is that it sets certain guidelines for certain types of programs, such as body-worn cameras, such as various programs to fund law enforcement programs, and the departments receiving that funding have to have their officers trained on certain types of mental health circumstances, addiction situations, racial bias, gender equity, and so forth. They have to have certain policies and procedures in place, all of which I can say the Decatur Police Department has done all of these, and we did them well ahead of the Safety Act, well ahead of the George Floyd tragedy that happened in Minneapolis. So we can say to all of those, done, 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 and as a result of that, that means that the city of Decatur is eligible for funding for many of these law enforcement programs. If a community is not in compliance with that, then they might not get funding. But the Safety Act does not defund police departments. One of the other claims about the Safety Act is that it requires that there be cameras everywhere. That's not accurate either. I will tell you, however, that we are advocates of using a lot of cameras in the public domain. We have deployed over 100 cameras out on the streets of Decatur, and they have been very effective in criminal cases, in helping us find suspects in serious cases. And they have led to an increase in arrests and an increase in the closure of cases. So this is a good thing. I believe that these cameras keep people safe. One of the other things, though, that it does require is that depending on the size of a city, it is required to have its officers, not all of its officers, but its patrol officers anyway, wear what's called body-worn cameras. Now, I have found that these body-worn cameras are very effective in protecting the police, especially from unwarranted claims. It makes everybody, not just the suspect or an average citizen that's being contacted by the police, as well as the police officers themselves, more accountable for all of their actions. And isn't that what we all want anyway? The other claim about the Safety Act I'd like to discuss briefly has to do with cash bail. I think we're still sorting out the effects of this. It means that for crimes that a judge determines are not violent crimes, and that the suspect is not going to be a danger to society if he's released back into the community before he has a trial, that'll lead to a recurrence of a violent crime while they're awaiting trial. I think that we're just going to have to wait to see how this works out. I think that we understand what the intent of the authors of the bill is. That somebody who has a nonviolent crime and isn't going to be a physical threat to the community shouldn't necessarily languish in jail for a year, lose his job, lose his marriage, lose other things in his life while he's awaiting trial. It's the key indicator of whether or not this is going to be effective is whether or not judges and others in the criminal justice system are really willing to keep incarcerated those who are considered to be dangerous. One of the other, and this is the last one that I'll cover, has to do with qualified immunity. When the Safety Act was debated in the Illinois General Assembly, there was an attempt by its authors to eliminate qualified immunity. They were not successful, and qualified immunity remains a feature that protects our officers from frivolous litigation. It does not protect officers if they are found to have violated somebody's civil rights. But our officers should be protected from someone who would make a claim that they should have gone right when they went left, or that they turned on their lights and sirens 10 seconds before or after they otherwise could have, or silly sorts of things like that represent liability for just exercising reasonable judgment in the exercise of their duties, or reasonable judgment even in making arrests. If they clearly violate someone's civil rights, then that's another matter, and the law already provides for that. So qualified immunity was not eliminated. I think that there is legitimately a concern that the legislature may attempt to revisit that issue when they reconvene in the spring of 2023. We'll have to be on guard for that. It's hard enough for us to recruit new officers, and if they don't have qualified immunity protection, then it'll make it even harder for us to do that. But as it stands now, the Safety Act does not remove qualified immunity. So, like I said, I don't have time to cover all the other different features of the Safety Act, but we're going to provide a link here for you to learn more about that. And in a future video session, we'll give you some more information about that. Thanks for tuning in. I appreciate your interest in the work of the city, and I appreciate all the feedback that you provide to us.